see if it's my name.
Exactly.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Council, you wouldn't know it by the weather we're having, but in 1 month, we're going to be sitting around a table that's decorated with pumpkins and fall leaves, and we're going to be celebrating Thanksgiving. In the last year or two, there's been a bit of a change in my life, and I've been trying to be a more thankful person. And one thing I've realized that thankfulness and gratefulness are very closely related. And what I found in my life, thankfulness is a feeling, and gratefulness is an action that comes out of your thankfulness. The word gratitude is derived by the Latin word gratia, which means grace, graciousness, gratefulness, depending on the context. In some ways, gratitude encompasses all of these meanings. Gratitude is a thankful appreciation for what an individual receives, whether tangible or intangible. With gratitude, people acknowledge the goodness of their lives. In the process, people usually recognize that the source of that goodness lies at least partially outside of themselves. As a result, being grateful also helps people connect to something larger than themselves as individuals, whether to people, nature, a higher power. I like to think of that higher power as God. I saw, as I was going through the internet, I saw on Harvard Health a research that was done on gratitude. I just want to read you some of the results. 2 psychologists, Dr. Robert A. Edmonds of the University of California and Dr. Michael E. McCulloch of the University of Miami, have done research on gratitude. In one study, they asked all participants to write a few sentences each week, focusing on particular topics. One group wrote about things they were grateful for that occurred during the week. A second group wrote about daily irritations or things that had displeased them. And the third group wrote about events that affected them, with no emphasis on whether being good or bad. After 10 weeks, those who wrote about gratitude were more optimistic, felt better about their lives. Surprisingly, they also exercised more and had fewer visits to physicians than those who focused on sources of aggravation. Another leading researcher in this field, Dr. Martin E. P. Seligman, is a psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania, tested the impact of various positive psychological interventions on 411 people, each compared with a controlled assignment of writing about early memories. When their week's assignment was to write and personally deliver a letter of gratitude to someone who had never been properly thanked for his or her kindness, participants immediately exhibited a huge increase in happiness scores. This impact was greater than that from any intervention, with benefits lasting for a month. Of course, we cannot prove cause and effect with studies such as these, but most studies that are published on this topic support an association between gratitude and an individual's well-being. This one is one of my favorites. Managers who remember to say thank you to people who work for them find employees feel motivated to work harder. That is something I try and do every day, every time of every day. Matter of fact, when I leave my store, I will actually go seek out my staff and say goodbye, thank them and say goodbye. I think it's very important, and I will say that I have the best staff. They go the extra mile all the time. Whenever there is a challenge or a time deadline crunch, you know what? We're going to work together. We get it done. And I do believe it's out of my thankfulness and gratefulness for them that we appreciate each other both ways. Gratitude is a way for people to appreciate what they have instead of what they're reaching for. For something new in the hopes it will make them happier or thinking they can feel satisfied until every physical and material need is met. Gratitude helps people focus on what they have instead of what they lack. And although many feel contrived at first, this mental state grows stronger with use and practice. I'll just leave you with a few ways to cultivate gratitude in your life, things that have worked for me. Writing a thank you note. I'm going to quote a man who was very special to me. He's no longer with us. He's my dad. And he always told me, he said, Earl, there's always time to say thank you. And I've remembered that, and I've taken that with me, and I try to honor him in my life as I go. But there's always time to say thank you. And the feeling you get for writing a thank you letter, mail it, leave it for someone, or deliver it in person, it's amazing what that does for you. Count your blessings. Pick a time each week, sit down and write down your blessings, kind of like in a blessing journal. Reflect on what went right or what you're grateful for. Sometimes it helps to pick a number, maybe 3 to 5 items per week that you can identify. And as you write, be specific and think how the sensations you felt when something good happened to you. Lastly, I'd recommend pray. And when you pray, start with a thankful heart. Pray with gratitude. Psalm 107, 21, 22 says, "Oh, that you would give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works. Let us offer sacrifices of thanksgiving and declare his works with rejoicing." Thank you. Okay, Council, we have the agenda in front of us, looking for a motion to adopt. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Penner. Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. We have the minutes of August 16th, 2022, the regular council meeting, starting on page 1. We've all had an opportunity to review. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Hebert, second by Councillor Hebert. Any comments?
No comment.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, we will go to number 6, public hearings. It's just a little after 7:35. Council, we have quite a few public hearings, and what we'll do is we will take A and B, bylaw 2022 11 and 2212. We'll take those together, separate motions, but we'll open them up at the same time. Then we'll do C, and D will be subject to third reading of A, B, and C. So that's how we'll proceed going forward. So at this time, I will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Worthing, could you please introduce bylaw 2211?
Mr. Mayor, bylaw 2211 and also bylaw 2212 is an application for both an official community plan amendment and also a rezoning. I will introduce them together as the public hearing for those two items is concurrent. The owner of the property is 100-14761 Manitoba Ltd. With the applicant for bylaws 2211 and 2212 being Loewen Henderson Bandman Legault LLP. Purpose of the bylaws: firstly, bylaw 2211 is to redesignate the subject property, which is located at the corner of Old Tom Road and Loewen Boulevard in Steinbach, from residential policy area to commercial policy area. Secondly, bylaw 2212, purpose is to rezone the subject property from DR1 Development Reserve 1 to CMX, commercial mixed use. The land is being redesignated and rezoned with the intent of creating a commercial mixed use site as part of a proposed multi-phase residential development. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There are two items of correspondence on file for both of these bylaws. In addition, there are also no comments that have been received from community and regional planning. With respect to the application, It is recommended that City Council give bylaw 2211 second reading. If second reading is approved, the proposed bylaw must be submitted to the Minister for review and approval prior to consideration for third reading. And with respect to the rezoning bylaw 2212, it is also recommended that City Council give that bylaw second reading, subject to a development agreement and subject to any new information that may be provided at the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Workstein. Is the applicant here today? Would you wish to speak?
Sure.
Okay. Just take the podium, and because everything's taped, say your name and your address. You've been here before.
Just once or twice. It's Candace Morrow. I'm the applicant from Loewen Henderson, Banman Legault, and that's at 250 Main Street here in Steinbach. I'm going to kind of combine my comments all into one for all four, just to avoid repetition of me coming up here every single time. So we'll just do that. So while there are separate hearings in relation to the proposed subdivision plan, which includes the amendment to the OCP, the rezonings inclusive of the public hearing for the subdivision, I've combined all into one, as I've said. I firstly want to say that this plan being presented has been a culmination of a few years of planning to ensure that we follow the intent of the City of Steinbach's official community plan and to ensure that this development is compatible with existing and future developments. The land was designated as future residential development in 2018 when it was initially annexed into the City of Steinbach. And while I understand that with it being a farmed parcel for a number of years, it creates uncertainty for area residents, I want to stress that great thought was put into this proposal. As Loewen Boulevard is an arterial road which changes to a collector road past this development, we are confident that not only will the upgrades to Loewen Boulevard, inclusive of curbing, paving, sidewalks, will be a benefit to all area residents and to those residents within the City of Steinbach, but the roadway is already designed to accommodate the traffic generated and the internal roads connecting to both Loewen Boulevard and Old Tom Road, and they have been designed to be compatible to existing road and street systems with the neighboring developments. Ample walking trails and connectivity has been planned to take resident safety into consideration, and the area has been designed with multiple green spaces for open area and pocket parks. The strategic planning under the rezoning hearings have also been designed to have minimal impact to surrounding area residents and to create a cohesive transition from both the commercial mixed use, the residential high density, moving into the single family and two-family dwelling areas. Drainage has presented the greatest concern with our neighboring municipality. To alleviate those concerns, my client has had the engineering group prepare a further geotechnical, hydrological, and hydraulic report, which was prepared and sent to the arm of Labrokery with a request that they rescind their objection that they have on file. Not only have we worked with the province to ensure that the drainage is upgraded with the entire planned area to accommodate this proposal, but it has been engineered to ensure that the neighboring developments are accommodated and the drain will be improved substantially. You guys as council are aware, but some of our members of our public may not be, but the City of Steinbach actually has a higher stringent than that of the province. So because of that higher stringent, the due diligence in engaging with the multiple engineering firms and working with the province in tandem with the City of Steinbach should have alleviated the concerns respecting drainage. That effectively concludes my presentation. I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. Councillor, any questions for the applicant? Okay, sit down. Is there anyone here with questions, comments, or objection to this file?
I do, but on the entire project, not just this particular item. So can I do it once you're through with the rest of it?
So you want to do it during
Address this as a whole.
this as a whole? Because we're working on just A and B at this time. Just the official community plan amendment and the rezoning of the CMX.
Try and separate my presentation to some degree then,
Okay.
although I wasn't prepared to do it that way. So I might be up here multiple times then. Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Ray Fast. I reside at 435 Loewen Boulevard, which is right on the corner of Loewen Boulevard and Old Tom Road. and I would like to officially oppose the proposed subdivision and bylaws 2211, 2212, 2213 after. Some longer-term council members are aware that I've resided here for 18 years and expressed my concerns multiple times about flooding issues on my yard and draining issues from the creek closest to the corner of Loewen Boulevard and Old Tom Road. This is still an ongoing situation in spring, and anytime we get a heavier rainfall, even the 2 inches we just recently had. The proposed subdivision does not appear to show this waterway, nor the required 150-foot buffer area adjacent to either side of the natural creek system. The areas proposed by 2211, 2212, 2213 does not show this creek. If developed to C-mix commercial and high-density housing, it would appear it would not meet the 150-foot buffer criteria and will greatly magnify flooding issues. The proposed commercial lot on the corner of Loewen Boulevard and Old Tom Road also does not show the creek or the required buffer zone, and it would appear unable to meet that criteria. This area is very low and frequently underwater. The high-density housing area, surface water will need to drain somewhere. Where will this overland water go? The creek, nor my backyard and my neighbors cannot handle any additional runoff. I have in the past made a suggestion that this area be expanded and made into a retention pond, which is basically what it currently is. The footprint of the commercial and high-density housing with surface water draining into the creek would result in major draining and flooding issues, and again, does not appear to meet the required buffer zones. Therefore, this development should not be allowed to proceed. I have more, but I'll deal with that later, possibly.
Thank you. Is there anyone else with questions, comments, or objections?
I would have a request, that's basically it, if I can.
Okay, come to the mic, because it's taped.
I just came off the forage harvester 20 minutes ago. I have no paper, no nothing here.
Your name is?
Pardon?
State your name and address, please. Your name and address.
Oh,
please.
okay. My name is Gilmer Penner. I don't know how to address you guys officially. I know all of you, but I don't know how to address you in an official way, so I will just call it, say, it's the city of Steinbach and the council meetings, and yeah. I also know the developers well. They're my friends. I have a request. We own the land adjacent east of this proposed development, the quarter there. And I was here once before making a request, of which I have the same thing now. That fell on deaf ears. I wish it would have a little bit more this time, but it might end up in dust again. When our concern is about the fencing style type of a thing. I talked to Waldo and Adrian about that this afternoon. I would like to see a little bit more teeth in there from the city council itself, other than being left, until now in the city, it's been left up to the developer. And that looks, we live on Old Tom Road. There's about 10 different types of fences there. Not one resembles the other. It looks nasty. Now, I know life isn't all about looks, but this looks absolutely ridiculous. There's no formula there. Yeah, it keeps the dogs inside. I know that. It does that. On Park Road, similar. There's a wire fence, and there's different types of wooden fencing there. Again, it's an eyesore. It's not a class stuff. When you look at the city of Winnipeg on a perimeter highway has one fence. That isn't left up to I don't know who does it, but it isn't, each neighbor puts up his own fence there, unless they all agree on the same kind of fencing. Is it Waverly already from the nuisance ground into the city? There's fences designed there, there's no development there, the fences are there already. Now, I'm assuming they're there for a purpose. So I would like to see the city of Steinbach request that they would request from the developer to put some kind of a barrier there. It can be a berm plus a fence, or only a fence, but something that would keep the debris inside. When construction is going on, like the building, as good as they mean of cleaning up papers and all this kind of stuff, plastic, it ends up in our fields. We farm farm on the property east of E.G. Penner's there, and we have to spend hours of every spring cleaning up the property there, as good as they all mean to, but it's there. So I'm assuming unless we demand something or ask for something somewhere, somehow, this will more than likely end up in the same way, unless the developer decides to do something about that. If left to, I know it's a cost, fences aren't cheap. Maintenance of them is even more money. But I would ask if the city would put a little bit teeth in there that this thing would happen. Doesn't have to happen the first year, but that it would at someplace along the line, someplace that would happen, that it would protect our properties and the neighbor's property from this kind of debris that ends up in our forage harvester and wraps around bearings and causes seals to go and this kind of stuff, which we have on our farm. So we would ask the city to do just that if we could. I hope it doesn't fall on deaf ears. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else with comments, questions, or objections? Okay.
Good evening. My name is JP John Paul Kraft. I live at 600 and 588 Loewen. I'm here to speak on behalf of myself and my wife, Carrie Lee. And it's pretty funny. Mayor Earl Funk, your words at the beginning of the meeting tonight, it's very timely because when thinking of speaking today, I have questions, but I'm not opposed. And I think I'm grateful for the risk that Adrian Fast is taking in developing and building this town. And so I thank you. I really do. And I don't have any objections, just questions. So
Okay.
I'll list those for you. But without these guys that put their neck out, Steinbach wouldn't grow. So I'm not opposed to the idea of this development. Quite the opposite, I'm in favor. And ourselves stand to benefit in the future from the expansion of the city and development of Loewen Boulevard. I just have a few questions, and they revolve around safety, health, and traffic. I think that's the common themes here. So I'm wondering what the council has planned for the intersections of Hespeler and Loewen and Old Tom and Loewen, considering their proximity and the amount of traffic that we'll be seeing when this development's complete. I used to live on Wyndham, and traffic would be backed up past Wyndham on occasion at that intersection already. I guess I have a question too, is if I'm asking these, is this coming back to us in the form of a written answer, or are they answered in the evening during this meeting?
Well, some of this will get answered tonight.
Okay.
Some of this we won't know until, like some of the, like how the stop signs will go, what the flow, is there going to be a traffic circle, like those things we're discussing as well with Hespeler and Old Tom. We are working on those kinds of things. We're well aware of that intersection, and we do discuss it when we get into study session and those kinds of things, and we are looking at improving it. So some of those things are a work in process.
Okay.
And some of these things take time, because as development comes, we let the development happen, and then we can work on the road system.
Fair comment. Wondering what the access will be from this new neighborhood for children, pedestrians, cyclists. I think you've addressed that. It looks like the plan does include some of this, but wondering what it looks like with Loewen and Old Tom, especially considering Old Tom still has no shoulder and no way for pedestrians or cyclists to get from that end to Loewen currently. There will be an increased traffic obviously on Old Tom and lots of construction equipment. Is that road, is it rated for that kind of equipment to be hauled on that road on a regular basis? If not, it falls on Loewen. Can that bridge support that kind of traffic? I think Candace did mention that everything was up to code, so that's great news. We're happy to hear that. Dust is a major issue for us at 600 Loewen and even on Wyndham Estate Drive. And I know that sounds crazy, but I got to know all of my neighbors very well, and everybody complained about the dust coming from Loewen Boulevard. And we are in September, and for the first time this year, the city has done a great job of suppressing dust, but it's mid-September. All summer, it was actually pretty bad. Could write my name in the windshield every morning. Will the speed limit be reduced from the 70 kilometers an hour on Loewen Boulevard currently, considering the traffic will increase, as well as it being adjacent to a residential development now? How far will the city be paving Loewen Boulevard? And has it considered doing more than a minimum requirement for this development? The reason I ask that question is I see the road maintenance equipment there at least once a week. And I can't imagine that 4 city employees and 3 or 4 pieces of equipment weekly is a very small amount of money to be spent on an annual basis. And the water flow question, I don't think I can do it any better than, I apologize, what was your name again? Ray. Ray, I mean, Ray Fasts, I think he said it all. And in conclusion, I think it's just that we don't want people to come to Steinbach and say, hey, they did an okay job. I feel like people should come here and say, wow, look at what they did with that development. This is an example. We should do this in our city. I think that's all I want to share for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else with comments, questions?
I'd just like to make one comment. I'm Ray's neighbor. My name is Dwayne Engel. I've resided at the corner of Old Tom and Loewen Boulevard since 1973, and I'm still trying to figure out why it's called Loewen Boulevard. And I see that there's another boulevard. My understanding of a boulevard is a little different than just a regular street. But anyhow, the point that I would like to make at this point, if you're going to actually do an assessment on traffic, the comment was made that the roads are in place for the traffic. That is not true. What I would like you to do is to do a traffic count. And don't do it while the road is closed under construction. Do it once the bypass is open again. Okay? Because at 4:30, 5 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30, I have a hard time getting off my driveway. So if you're going to do an assessment of traffic, for goodness sakes, do a traffic count, please.
We do a traffic count every year. It's usually done in October.
I
And,
haven't seen anything there in the last 2 years.
okay, we do have data on those corners. Because we have been doing traffic counts for years on that. I can't remember exactly on Hesper how many years now, but it's been.
Are you actually talking about a cable across the road, how many cars?
No, we actually have, we get a firm that comes and they sit and they count cars.
I've seen that. It doesn't do much good when they're sitting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You gotta be there at 5 o'clock.
I think they do, from what I understand, they do different kinds of hours. Like they're supposed to stagger the hours.
Remember, I've lived there since 1973. I've seen this happen.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing is, right now, under current traffic, not that the road is closed. but
Can you
while
take the
at
podium,
current
please?
traffic, it's my
Can you move to the
feeling
podium?
that Old Tom Road and Park Road should be closed to bicycles until that road is upgraded or somebody is going to get hurt. Believe me.
Thank you. Is Is there anyone else with comments, questions, or objections?
Are we debating some of the traffic and safety items here?
We're actually, we're debating the OCP and the CMX use.
Okay, I think I'll
Okay,
interject with some of this here. Okay, continuing from where I was before, there's a matter of traffic and safety. Has the city of Steinbach or the developer done a traffic study, both vehicle and active transportation? Old Tom Road, Park Road, and Loewen Boulevard East are not designed to handle traffic now. Never mind additional traffic that this development on prime farmland would create. Land that should only be developed as last resort. There are already active transportation safety issues for cyclists and pedestrians along Old Tom and Loewen Boulevard east of Hespeler. I live there, I can attest to that. What safety measures are there within the proposed development? Is there an active transportation plan there also? Are there any thoughts regarding schools in the catchment area being able to accommodate additional students and getting them to school safely? What has the city done to work with the province and Hanover School Division to address overflowing schools? Rapid development without consideration for this is detrimental to our children, grandchildren, who are already in classes bursting at the seams. We're going to be dealing with 2213 yet?
yes.
Okay. I will come back then. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else with comments, questions, or objections? I'll say one more time. Anyone with comments, questions, or objections? Okay. I will ask the applicant if they would like to rebuttal or answer any of these questions.
My name is Walden Eustater. I live at 78 Granite Park Boulevard. And I guess I'll speak to the entire development at this point in time. And then as you've broken it up, I guess my comments could either be feathered in and out of that, I guess. Mayor and councillors, when the city of Steinbach officially completed the annexation of this parcel of land in 2018, the decision was made by the city of Steinbach that in the future, the city's wishes were to change this land from agriculture-based activities to expanding our city to the east. As developers, this is seen as an opportunity to create a fit-for-all community incorporating a mixture of single-family homes, attached homes, multifamily homes, as well as a sampling of light commercial application, tasteful and sensitively placed in the development while maintaining a creative ambience of community, plus a waterway running through the center of it. I would just, one thing I hadn't put into my notes here, and I'll just take a segue here, and that is the waterway. We developed a waterway like this at Grandview Drive in probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and anyone familiar with that area, there was water issues and problems in that area, and we had the engineering done at that time with the help of the City of Steinbach engineers, and also with, at the time it was it's WSP now, MMM Engineering Group, and it's worked really well. And we don't have flooding issues. We slowed the water up, we retained the water, and then released it, and have done a really good job for the city on that waterway. And anyone that is familiar with the area can attest to that. And that's the type of engineering that has to be done. It's a protocol that the city requires us to do, it's a protocol that water stewardship requires us to do, and it's a protocol that provincial planning requires us to do as well. So there's a lot of work that gets done to water issues and water problems and water flows, and a lot of those are accomplished with drainage swales, like in this case, which is also aesthetically very nice for the development, but also by land drainage systems, storm sewers, and that type of thing, which changes the whole aspect of water flow and water management. So to accomplish this vision, the developers began working on this professionally designed development several years ago. Among the professionals who contributed were Lacey Godet, the City of Steinbach planner, Aaron Rock, the head engineer of Steinbach, Richard Sisson, Darren Blackburn of SBC Consulting and Engineering, the Office of Community Planning of the Province of Manitoba, and the Office of Water Stewardship of the Province of Manitoba. The collaboration of these professionals resulted in the beautiful development proposal which you see here today. There were also agreements entered into with Steinbach Campus Foundation, which is the premier landowner to the west of this property, which allowed access over their land to make it possible to create the required water loop and to create safe drinking water, and with the City of Steinbach's foresight in extending the infrastructure along Boulevard right now from Walnut Street to enable this development to proceed, which is underway as we speak. A lot of good proactive work has been done. The waterway will be engineered in design and function to the province of Manitoba's required water stewardship standard and beyond that, as our standard is higher than theirs, and it will be constructed in such a way that possibly even the arm of Labroca's concerns will be professionally satisfied to the required provincial standard and still maintain an aesthetically pleasing part of this development. I'll be leaving a copy of this report that we have from the engineering, which we put together, and we just got it together just last week Friday, so we couldn't get it into your hands sooner, which should satisfy any of the neighboring RM's concerns. And also local concerns, because these folks do know how to handle water. As I'm certain you can appreciate, it's taken a lot of discussion, planning, design, and expertise over the past 34 months to develop and design this community. The participants are all experts in their fields, and through in-depth synchronization, we've come up with a plan which we know the community at large will embrace. Watermark Estates will make its mark on the community, and already is much anticipated by many citizens of Steinbach and the surrounding area. We kindly ask that you approve this development and give your endorsement to all the accomplished efforts by all the professionals who have contributed to this fit-for-all enhanced development. Thank you on behalf of the development team. If you have any questions, I can answer them.
Any questions of council? Councilor Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question regarding a comment that Mr. Fast had made, and I'll try to paraphrase it as accurately as I can. He had referenced a concern that a creek not being shown on the map and the 150-foot buffer appears not to be there, and then a concern that it'll make drainage worse. Could you comment specifically on that point?
You know, I'm not the professional as far as water stewardship and drainage goes, and that's why we hire professionals to do that. And so they indicated to us, that was a concern or a question that we had when we originally came up with a proposal like probably 3 years ago. We said, what are we going to do with this corner? And they said that we will engineer it in such the land drainage system, the storm sewers will collect the water to a certain part. The shedding of water off of buildings in that corner will be handled by LDS. And also, as you'll see, if and when the development gets off the ground, you'll see that the elevations of the roads and so on will be draining the water to certain areas, and things will be moving towards the waterway and also to LDS systems. So it seems kind of funny how you have a low area like that's going to be mitigated, but that's what they do.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't have the technical answers, but I do have that all in this report, which I'm going to leave with you folks here today.
Quick follow-up.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We may have can Candace just rebut to that just for a second?
Well, absolutely, absolutely. And I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding your answer correct. But go ahead.
Correct. The provincial waterway system with the 150-meter buffer is actually for provincial waterways. So that would be for the Manning Canal. The little creek that runs was natural drainage. That's not buffered by the 150-foot mark. So that drainage with the engineering, that water comes and will flow into the Manning Canal, which is the provincial waterway. That one does have the 150-foot buffer.
Okay. And then just a follow-up. So if I'm understanding correctly, then what you're saying is that based on the report and the analysis of engineers, that this will not make drainage worse. If anything, it'll actually make it better because of, is that basically what you're saying?
Actually, the city is looking forward to this plan coming forward so that it will improve the drainage in the entire area. It has to work, for sure, yeah.
Okay.
Anything? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Hebert.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Candace, I appreciate the comments on the 150-foot buffer. That was my concern to Mr. Fast, but we didn't ask questions there. As you probably know, my other job, my appointment from council is to the Seine Roseau Watershed District. Mr. Newstater, in layman's terms, can you just explain to us, when you have the collector, the storm sewers and the collectors going into the waterway, in layman's terms, can you tell us how it's proposed to slow down? Like, is it retention ponds? Is it certain culverts with damming off the water?
Yeah, in layman's terms, that would
To the
be,
satisfaction of
Yeah.
some of the people here too.
well, basically, when you see the drawing there, I mean, you see there'll be restrictors at Loewen Boulevard at the section that's towards the end of the map there, when it comes across the road. Then it will also be restricted at the waterway crossing in the center of the development, and also restricted one more time towards Old Tom. And it's much the same procedure has been done on Grandview on the other end of the city, where it restricts flow and does a slow release. So it holds the water and then sheds it in appropriate manner. And these things are calculated by the experts in the field, and they do have studies done, and they know how much water is flowing through now, and they know how much water this can handle, and they know that we're going to exceed that standard, because City of Steinbach demands we exceed the standard that the province has put out for us.
So we're saying 3 restrictors with culverts. Appreciate that.
That's correct, yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Okay. This is for council? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you mind handing these around? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fast, just before I close the public hearing on these 2 items, you raised your hands. Do you have something that was pertinent to what Mr. Newstater had said?
It would still primarily have to do with that little corner 3-acre portion, which is right at my corner where the little creek runs through. I question how they're going to make water run uphill. I think the city has tried to do that a few times and it doesn't work. That area is extremely low in comparison to the rest of it. I used to race cars in that corner, and we'd roll the cars there on a regular basis because it slopes down so much. I approached city administration at one point why they couldn't divert some of that water along Old Tom into the creek there, and was informed that the waterways wouldn't allow it, nor would Manitoba Hydro. So that's just a comment I have on that.
Thank you. Mr. Worthing, yes.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, before you consider closing the public hearing, I understand there's another party who wishes to speak.
Okay. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file?
Good evening. We are Kelly and Leona Cote. We live at 650 Loewen Boulevard, and we would like to just say we appreciate our neighbors raising all these concerns, because we had those very same concerns. Waterway runs straight through our property, and overland flooding happens very quickly there. With a deluge like the rainfalls that we've had this year alone, without restrictions to the flow of the creek. So, yeah, again, we appreciate our neighbors addressing these concerns.
Yeah, because like you're saying that there's 3 restrictions in that development, we're going to be flooded, almost guaranteed.
It'll be backing up into our property completely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I will just ask one more time, is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this vote?
Clarity.
Question of clarity?
Through you, to the developer.
Go ahead.
Again, I don't know if you've answered the question. Certainly, I haven't had a chance to read through the documentation. But the concern we hear ongoing here is a Deerfield drain that drains through that 3-acre corner. And I don't know if I'm satisfied yet with the answer. I agree with you that we have done a lot of work with our drainage throughout the city, and the developers have done a good job in the areas that they've done. They've developed it well. How do we assure, what kind of assurance is there? Is there anything further that we can do? I noticed on our information package on page 90, we have a map there, I believe, that has various elevations. And that low area is at 855, and the creek, the major creek, which is called the Manning Canal, is roughly at the same elevation, but there is a hill in between. How do we get that water, to Mr. Fast's question, how do we get the water over the hill?
Jake, you know I've never been to school. I can't answer the technical question, but the answer that I can give you is that's why we hire engineers. That's why we've worked with your engineer, your planner, the provincial people that are given to us to work this out. And you know, our area that we live in here is fairly flat. It's not. This is probably the only undulation that we have in the city of Steinbach, and we're going to deal with it. But I would have to say that if a developer is the owner's Adrian, and he's here, and there's no way he'd want to develop a piece of CMX land or multifamily land that's going to be flooded every time there's a rainfall. Like, that wouldn't make sense, because he needs to develop that piece in order to, like, just residential lots won't pay for a development like this. Like, the city requires the developer to totally upgrade and put the LDS services and all this water and sewer services in for Loewen Boulevard as far as the development reaches. So that all has to be done under the developer cost. And so to recapture that, you get into multifaceted communities so that different segments can afford to pay more for land than strictly just single-family residential units. In doing that, he has to make land available that can be developed that way by end users, and that would be the CMX and multifamily piece. And when you have those pieces, there's no way he can afford to sell a piece of land that's going to be deemed to be flooding and have someone spend $15 million, $20 million on an apartment block or on a commercial building and say, hey, my land's going to be flooded. And these are sophisticated people that buy these pieces to do that kind of development, and there would be no way that you would be able to sell something like this to someone that is in fear of having it be flooded. That's one safeguard on a side that we don't see today, but that's coming. The other safeguard is to know that before any of this is done, there's a development agreement that's done by the city, which is scrutinized by your engineers, and all the work that's been done in the past 34 months by the engineers to engineer this site. Was this site easy to engineer? No, it certainly wasn't. But do we believe it can be done? That's what we're told, that it can be done, yes. And we just have to know that the way they're doing it is the way it can be done, and they've assured us that they can. So I just don't know how else to answer that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no other questions, comments, or objections to this file, I will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Schweitzer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're doing the motions one at a time, correct?
Yeah, one at a time. We'll do A first.
Okay, I will make a motion to give second reading to bylaw 2211. That's the amendment to the official community plan.
Second by Councillor Penner. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep my comments primarily on this particular part, but I will just briefly comment as far that it's important to keep in perspective here that we have a significant development that's being proposed, and it's always exciting when we have developers who are willing to make these types of investment, because that means it means businesses, it means homes, it means that more people have a place to live, it means that there are more places where people can do business. And that is the long-term goal. We want Steinbach to be able to continue to grow. We want everyone who wants to live in Steinbach to be able to live here, and everyone who wants to open a business to be able to do so here. And that is why we continue to grow. It's why we annex land, and so that way that we're not limited in terms of future growth. Specifically on this, on the community plan amendment, in order to move ahead with this plan, the first thing that has to be done is to change the official community plan, and the change is to redesignate it from residential policy area to commercial policy area. And that's because of the fact the proposal is to have commercial mixed use within it, and so therefore the overall designation has to be commercial policy area. But I will just say that I understand, many of the concerns that are raised, but I also do have to accept when there is, evidence that's presented in terms of many months of work, engineering analysis, both by the city and by engineers working for the developer, review by the province. This is taken seriously. This is important work that happens. We have good developments that happen within the city, and so I think that we have some great potential here. So I certainly would hope that we move ahead with the overall plan, but specifically on the community plan amendment, certainly redesignating from residential policy area to commercial policy makes sense.
Thank you. Councillor Penner, anything further?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am very much looking forward to seeing this development happen. Hopefully, this is a very difficult parcel of land to engineer precisely because of things like water, the drainage canals going through this property, and I know a lot of work has gone into it. And as per Mr. Newstater's comments, that in order to make developments profitable for developers, they have to take the approach of mixing commercial, residential, et cetera. So this, redesignating this piece of land is the first step in allowing for that to happen, and hopefully making this a successful development.
Thank you. Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
No.
From council, this is, I agree with Councillor Penner. This is actually a real terrific development. It's a big development. It's a piece of land that is hard to develop because you've got creeks running through it. You've got like hills, which you don't have much of in Steinbach. So it's probably, was probably very challenging because this is probably the only hill you'll run into in developing in Steinbach. But having said that, I do believe that they've done everything they can. And I think our engineers have worked on it, their engineers have worked on it. And I think we need to give it a chance. And this is the first step is amending the OCP, and that's where we have to start. So I will also, I'm in favor of this motion because this is a good start and we have to start somewhere. Call for the question. All's in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, council, we'll go into number B. That is bylaw 20-2012. This is the rezoning of Old Tom and Loewen Boulevard. How would you like to proceed? Councillor Siemens,
Motion to approve.
second by Councillor Penner. Go ahead, Councillor Siemens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is another step in the process. This is where we take a look at our zoning and rezone it to appropriate. Currently, it's zone DR1 or Development Reserve 1. Development Reserve is land that's been set aside for future development until it's to be developed. Then we make the decision as to how to zone it, depending on the development that's going in. In this case, it's C-MX, it's commercial mixed use. So, and because there will be some commercial use as well as residential on this property, so it needs to be a dash MX, it's commercial and mixed use, which means commercial residential use. So it would be appropriate to rezone it to what's going to be built there.
Anything further?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in terms of the comments with regards to drainage, I know of a firsthand account, working with administration and engineering, that the last thing that they want to do is be going against what the province of Manitoba is dictating, which is why we do have such stringent standards. And just a firsthand account, living in Southland Estates area, where we do have area that has been reclaimed. It was farmland, and there is still farmland right on the border of it. The water actually in that area flows unrestricted on the borders of the development and flows through very quickly into the city, whereas where our development is, it's been engineered beautifully into drainage canals that hold it back. And firsthand account that the water flow actually has been vastly improved in that area due to the development and the engineering of the land. So I don't have any concerns with considering the engineering reports that we've seen that there should be exacerbated drainage concerns from this.
Thank you. Anything further of council? Anything closing? No. Oh, sorry, you had.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to also comment on the fact that these people have concerns, and I appreciate their concerns, but with the engineering that's been done, I feel this could improve the whole plan, and you might have less water with this plan than now. That's my hope. That's all I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further of council? Well, council, this is step 2. This is the rezoning. We've got, I just will say we've got commercial mixed use in other parts of the city, and it works well. It works really, really well. You've got residential and commercial in the same place. We've just seen nothing but good things with it. You look at Millbrook Market, that's completely mixed use, and that's filling up where it's attractive. It's been attractive to large businesses, new businesses, and I think that will really enhance the residential that will be around it. Because the nice thing about that is you have got instant users, and that's why I think the mixed use is so desirable. Again, it's worked well. And I do believe, again, I'll say about drainage, I do believe the engineers are working well. Plus, I have, with the rain events we've had this year, I have personally been contacted by residents that have had drainage issues in their backyard. And our staff is incredible. Our engineers, they you know what, when they call and they meet with the resident, they go down, shoot lines. Everyone knows exactly where they need to be. You know what? It's really been, we've had some really bad drainage things that have happened, and it hasn't happened that it was engineered wrong. It was people come in and landscape, they over landscape, and then they impede water from running. And that is a challenge. That happens all the time because we see our yard and we want to make our yard better. But what's happened is that with our staff coming in, they help the neighborhood correct it, and the water flows again, and it's been really, really good. So I have all the faith in the engineers, I have faith in our staff, and I do believe the developers in this case are looking to create a quality product that will stand for years and years in this community. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, council, we will now go to C. This is bylaw 2213. This is rezoning of Old Tom and Loewen Boulevard. It starts on page 34 of your package. I will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Workentine, could you please introduce this file?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, bylaw 2213 is a rezoning application with the applicant for the bylaw being Loewen Henderson Banman Legault LLP. The owner of the property is 100147661 Manitoba Ltd. Purpose of the rezoning bylaw is to rezone the portion of the subject parcel, as is noted on the public notice, from Development Reserve 1 to a mix of RSF, residential single family, RLD, residential low density, and RHD, residential high density, as shown on the map. The land is being rezoned as part of a multi-phase residential development. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There are 2 pieces of correspondence on file. No comments have been received from community and regional planning. With respect to this particular rezoning application, recommendation from administration is that council give this bylaw second reading, subject to a development agreement.
Thank you. The applicant is here today. Do you wish to speak to this?
I think I covered it off in the first one, so again, we're here to answer questions if there's any further questions.
Okay, just 1 second. Are there any questions of council? No? Okay, I see no questions, so said. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file?
I'm beginning to feel like a frequent visitor here. I oppose bylaw 2213 and its rezoning to the high-density housing. The general area already has an abundance of high-density housing, creating traffic concerns. Does the city not have areas in the official community plan that are currently zoned for this? This area is not designed for this and cannot accommodate this. Additional traffic noise will affect residences that border Old Tom Road and Park Road. It is already a major issue because these roads are being used as a city bypass and speedway and not designed to handle this. While I support growth, the infrastructure in this area cannot sustain the amount of people that this development would bring in. There first needs to be a traffic impact study, an active transportation safety plan, and a surface water runoff plan, all of which I'm not sure how they will be accomplished. There's also the matter of sewer backup problems in the area west of Hespeler, where this area would feed into. Overall, I would ask council to stop looking at the tax revenue, step back, and revisit and study your official community plan. Do some serious long-term planning and stick with it. Again, what value is the OCP if it's not adhered to? This development should not be allowed to proceed. There needs to be an overall impact study done on how and whether this can even proceed. Premature loss of prime farmland, required infrastructure, drainage, vehicle traffic, active transportation, etc., need to be a part of that study. Irresponsible growth hurts our community. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here with comments, questions, or objections to this file?
JP Craft again, 600 and 588 Loewen. So in the master plan, it looks like it makes a lot of sense, but when you carve out this as phase 1, it skews the percentages of single family, low density, high density, and commercial. I respect that the full plan does make sense when you look at the percentages, but I would just ask the council to consider the fact that when I look at blues, pinks, and yellows, it's a lot of people for the amount of land that's being developed there. So I don't feel, I would oppose, I think there's too much high density in this proposal in phase 1. If you look at it as a whole, probably fine. But we all know that when phase 2 happens, we'll be back here again for another change of some sort, which is what happened in the last development that I lived in. So Those are my comments. And oppose the fact that there's too much low and high density.
You want to, yeah,
It's a fair comment, and it looks kind of strange there, but the master plan of the whole community was kind of laid out on that earlier map that we saw, and it's not shown here now. And the studies that have been done as far as water drainage, water shedding off of housing and all that stuff, they're based on the entire community. And so when you see the balance of the community, it looks a lot more balanced than what it does on that initial map that we looked at just 2 minutes ago here. So it does show the balance of the community right there. It also then shows the integrated green spaces for pocket parks and that type of thing. So we do think that we have a master plan here that will work well. It's just that it's not financially feasible to do the entire 128 acres at one time. It just doesn't work that way. As far as sewer backup goes, the developer has to, I don't have a, do you have a pointer here, Troy, or someone? I'll just say, halfway up Old Tom Road there, when you see that kind of that large green area there, that's where there's going to be a lift station put in. The lift station today costs a tune of $1.2 to $1.4 million, and that's a cost borne by the developer. No one's going to feel sorry for him, but I'm just bringing that up to you right now anyway. So that is that's a total lift station to service the whole area, so it should not affect anybody's sewer backup anywhere else in Steinbach.
okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here with comments, questions, or objections? Go ahead.
I actually came here today, I wasn't going to say a word. That's why I don't have any paper in front of me. But when I look at that plan, there's one thing that you have to take into consideration when it comes to traffic flow. Loewen Boulevard is a total access route from Deerfield. So all the traffic from Deerfield, especially if that road is upgraded and paved, I would say that 85% of the traffic coming out of Deerfield will come down that road. So all I'm trying to say is that when you look at this thing, look at the traffic flow. Because, my goodness, fellas, when you go down Main Street of Steinbach, number 12 highway at 12 o'clock, 12:30, the traffic in our town is getting worse and worse. Let's not make another bottleneck where it's going to get worse again, because it is going to be heavy, heavy traffic. All I'm saying is, let's take a look at it. Let's actually plan for the future and not have problems in the future we can't fix. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
While I do respect Mr. Newsader's comments about the overall, that wasn't my objection. It was that phase one includes too much high density, low density. That line could be redrawn. I'll just bring it to the council's attention. There is 0 green space included in phase one, unless I'm missing something. Okay, so maybe when we look at approving phase one, we look to incorporate a portion of all the things the developer's promising, so that it's not left to the end when all the money's gone. So in case it wasn't noted before, I do oppose this, what is this one, the subdivision 2213?
2213, yeah.
Yeah. And propose that it include or exclude the high density that you're listing to the east of the entrance on Loewen Boulevard.
Just as a comment, though, if they develop phase one, right, and yes, it's a lot of high density, a lot of impermeable surfaces, but the rest of the property is left alone at that point, so that still will be permeable. It'll accept the water that the rain that runs and that kind of stuff. So the whatever drainage they will do up to that point should be sufficient for phase one. As phase two comes, yes, it needs more, it'll need more drainage and the green spaces because you're using up more impermeable land, right? But when you have the high density in the bottom, you'll have the whole other the balance of the 120 acres will accept water, like will be impermeable, correct?
Actually, we're not, the developer's not required to, but the waterway is going to be the first, the entire waterway is going to be done first, even though they're not required to do that.
So
The entire waterway from
entire
one end
drainage
to
will
the
be
other
done
is going to be done first, just so that it can just be done, get it over with. And the waterway does develop. It's not a phenomenal green space, it's not, but if you look at the Grandview Drive one that we did there a few years ago, kids play there all the time. Like, it's definitely used as a green space, flying their kites, chasing their dogs around, whatever the kids do nowadays, yeah.
Okay. I hope that covers your drainage issues for phase one.
Actually, I didn't mention drainage once because I was assured by the council that everything's taken care of. What I was referring to is the percentage of high density. So if we're going from farmland to rezoning,
Okay.
and we're going straight to high, like, what's the percentage? What is the percentage of high density, low density, and single family in phase one? What is it? Does anyone know?
No, I don't know what the percentage is. I mean, I see the zoning, I don't know what exactly is proposed for building.
So that's, I mean,
But I don't know if that, when you look at the whole build-out, and you've got everything set up to handle that.
handle what? What are we talking about, water now? No, we've been reassured that the water's not an issue anymore.
Okay.
That's not my question. It's, are we now creating a high-density development? A majority high-density development? What's the timeline for phase two? What's the timeline for phase two?
It's hard to say, it's hard to build out. The way things are building out, it'll be pretty quick. But it's hard to say. You can never put a timeline on development because you develop as there's need. So it's hard to say when phase two will happen or how many phases they'll go through. You know, some developments are like go through 7 phases, but they gotta start somewhere. You have a question or?
Oh, can I just make a comment?
Yeah.
Just because we're approving this zoning for phase one doesn't necessarily mean that all the high density will fill up immediately. Having said that, there's people who need high density. Like, not everybody can afford a house, and mixed developments are very important that way. So you don't just have people who can afford nice houses and nice areas. It's also people who, need high density housing. So I'd be very cautious personally to be speaking out against having high density there as well. You have to look at the overall plan, not just phase one.
Fair comment. I agree with you completely. We do need high density. And one day I hope to be the developer myself. But when you have a proposed plan and phase one follows absolutely none of the percentages in the master plan, in my mind, it would make sense to have everything pro rata. Not develop all of the high density in the first phase and then move to single family.
Maybe when you're a developer, you'll change your mind.
I really appreciate that comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else with comments, questions, or objections? Okay, seeing none. Does the applicant want to speak one more time? No? Okay, and I will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Penner?
Motion to approve.
Councillor Swacer, second. Go ahead, Councillor Penner.
With any development, the rezoning needs to be changed, and it'll likely be changed as this development goes on based on supply and demand, because development really is a supply and demand type of thing based on, you know, who can afford what kind of housing, how many families are moving into the area, what they are looking for. So chances are there will be other rezoning in the future, but that's just standard when it comes to development. In terms of phasing, I mean, you have to phase in what makes sense, what's efficient. So to piecemeal high density here and single here just to keep ratios, temporary ratios, doesn't necessarily make sense. You have to look at the big picture with this type of development. And as I mentioned, high density is very important. And it's important to have it spread throughout the city, not just in one area. You know, different income levels, different types of housing. It's best actually if they're mixed. And there is a demand with housing costs and prices going up as much as they are. There's only going to be an increased demand for multi or for high density housing, I would expect. And, you know, developers aren't going to put up high density if nobody's going to be renting them. So if the demand for high density goes down, so will the builds go down as well. So yes, I would support the rezoning of this. And like I said, I'm assuming there'll probably be more as this development goes along.
Anything further?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just again to note that the land is currently zoned Development Reserve 1. It's a holding pattern. It's meant to be a temporary category until we have the final designation, which in this case is proposed to be a combination of RSF, RLD, and then residential high density. The reality is, as Councillor Penner noted, that we do need additional housing in Steinbach. As the city continues to grow, we need high density, we need lower density, and we need single family. And to stop that based on ratios on phase one, I don't think makes a lot of sense. Development isn't free. We have a developer pay policy, which means if there's going to be a new neighborhood, the developer pays. And it's a significant amount. And yes, the developers have to stage things in a way that it makes financial sense to do so. Development is a business. Not all communities have developers that do this. In some communities, cities do the development and hope that people buy the property. We don't ever want to be in that type of situation. That is a terrible prospect because then taxpayers are paying everything up front. As opposed to those who are doing the development. I do want to also just briefly respond to the, because it's a comment I've often heard elsewhere, just in terms of the question of, you know, stop looking at just at the tax revenue, as if the reason we would approve this sort of thing is because we're going to get extra tax revenue. The city, we don't benefit financially from having more development, because when you have more development, there's more services we have to provide. As the city has grown, there's simply more that we have to do. So you have more development, there's more we have to do. So we don't approve developments because it's going to get us extra tax revenue. We approve developments because we want development to happen in Steinbach. We want more housing so people who want to live here can live here. We want more commercial so businesses who want to be located here can do that. We want that to happen here in our city. We want our city to be able to grow, and developments like this give us the opportunity to do that. And you look throughout the city, where you've had new developments that have gone in, and often there were concerns at the outset, but when the development is done, we have a great new neighborhood. And that's the long-term perspective that we need to have when we're looking at these types of proposals. Thank you.
Anything further of council? Councillor Seine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll vote in favor of the rezoning, but also speak to the traffic. Traffic is We've talked about it many times. As a council, we've talked about it in our long-term planning sessions, and I'm sure it'll be part of our November planning session, assuming we're all going to be there, or those of us that hopefully will be there. The traffic around Steinbach is horrendous. Number 12, Hespeler and Loewen, starting tomorrow, will be a huge concern. And the traffic around Steinbach, when we paved Old Tom 10 years ago, whenever that was a law of unintended consequences. And that becomes a way to bypass our Highway 12 and our Main Street. And council is very well aware of that. We've talked about that at our study sessions, and we continue to do that as part of our long-term planning process, is how do we manage our traffic flows within Steinbach. And we have worked together with Manitoba Highways on 12 and 52. And we will continue to do that, and we've worked together with RM of Hanover as they border us because it's a concern on that end of Steinbach as well. But specifically to Old Tom and Loewen Boulevard, it's been talked about. It's part of our long-term planning strategies. There's not a definitive plan. We can plan much better now that we have this in front of us. And how do we get traffic through and around this development? And that will be part of our ongoing discussion. So to make a commitment, to make a change, there's ongoing traffic studies and numbers that we have. Those numbers will change again as we see each year that they do so. But it is part of our long-term planning strategy that the City of Steinbach employs. And twice a year, when we sit down and discuss our long-term, these have been part of that discussion for over 5 years already.
Thank you. Anything further? Anything closing?
Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
to you, please. I'd like to thank the number of citizens that have showed up here today and going out of their busy days to bring their concerns to the attention of council. Concerns that I think that council is aware of, but appreciate that you took your time to come here and dialogue with us. When we look at subdivisions and developments, I mean, this one here, again, is a multi-phase development, and we all know that housing is market-driven. So when we talk high density, low density, single-family dwelling, we know they're market-driven. And we know that the developer is the one that's taking the risk on all these projects. And there's no point in a developer building a lot of single-family dwellings when they're not going to be bought, or building a lot of high-density complexes when nobody's going to purchase or want to live in them. So I appreciate that the work that's gone into this subdivision by the developer in determining what the needs are for the citizens of this community. I just want to address the water issue briefly. As I am the chair of Seine Roseau Watershed, in the last 4 years, I've probably been involved in more than 100 projects, water projects, draining, shedding, retention, restricting water flows, and looking at drought areas, and worked with engineers. And I have faith in engineers, and in this project here, I don't only believe that it will be better, I believe with the engineering in place that in fact it will be better. I appreciate the comments from Councillor Siemens here, traffic issues. I was going to address those. As he stated, we will be studying those at summer session, and also we're aware of the pedestrian issues and the bike issues along Old Tom, and as I do a lot of walking and cycling myself, I am aware of that. And I appreciated the comments that were made about the lift station, that there's one going to be in place that's going to address the concerns that were raised in that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
Nothing further.
I have no further comments. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We will go to item 6D. This is 4451-2022-8586 subdivision. This is referring to Old Tom Road and Loewen Boulevard. Starts on page 50 on our package. We will close the public hearing, or the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Worthing, could you please introduce this?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this application for subdivision, Mr. Mayor, as you already noted, the file number is to create 95 parcels consisting of 30 RSF residential single-family lots, 60 RLD residential low-density lots, 4 RHD residential high-density lots, and 1 CMX commercial mixed-use lot. 2 public reserves, and also the opening of several streets, including Summit Way, Brookstone Crescent, Whitfield Drive, Black Creek Boulevard, and Luxford Street. Again, this is part of the overall development plan that has been proposed by the applicant. With respect to the file, notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There is 1 item of correspondence that has been received in response. Community and Regional Planning did provide comments and generally has no concerns subject to the subdivision. Application will be subject to provincial requirements. Recommendation from administration is that council approve the application for subdivision, subject to the approval of the third readings to each of bylaws 2211, 2212, and 2213, and also to the execution of a development agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Workstein. The applicant is here today. Do you wish to speak?
Again, we're here to answer some questions. I just want to point out, though, that I know that interconnectivity with pedestrian traffic is important, and we have taken that into consideration along Old Tom Road, so I do want everybody to be aware of that, as well as Loewen Boulevard. And it will interconnect with the other pathways the city has put in. So the safety concerns, I mean, I get it too. I drive down there, and it is scary when there's people biking and somebody may get hurt, but we have taken some of that into consideration and are planning for future, so there is that connectivity. So I do want to put that out there just in case that wasn't made aware of yet.
Thank you. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file?
I see just a short one from here.
No, you have to go to the podium, sorry.
I just have one question regarding Old Tom Road. How can you improve the traffic along there? There's no property designated for that. In the development on the west side of Old Tom, where and how will you be able to improve traffic flow there? It's impossible. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else would like to, that has a comment, question, or objection? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here with comment, question, or objection to this file? Okay. At this time, I will close the council meeting, open the public, or close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councilor Penner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion to approve.
Second by Councilor Siemens. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is in relation to the previous bylaw 2213 that we just passed of rezoning, and now this is actually subdividing the lots for them to be able to each have their own title and approved new zoning.
Anything further?
Nothing further.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
Nothing further.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Move to 6E. This is bylaw 2214. This is rezoning, referring to 417, 425, and 432 Hospital Street. It's on page 93 of our package. We will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Worthing, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Bylaw 2214 is an application for rezoning for properties with civic address of 417, 425, and 431 Hospital Street in Steinbach. The owners of the properties are as follows. 417 Hospital Street are Cornelius and Maria Miller. 425 Hospital Street are Douglas and Kara Dirksen. And 431 Hospital Street are Dennis and Marlene Duick. The applicant for the bylaw application is Reynold Peters of Southern Health Sante Sud. Purpose of the application is to rezone the proposed lots from RLD residential low density to EI educational and institutional to allow for the future expansion of the Bethesda Regional Health Center in Steinbach. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There is no correspondence on file. Recommendation from administration is that City Council give this bylaw second and third reading, depending on comments that are received at the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Worthington. Is the applicant here today? Do you wish to speak?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Reynold Peters. I am the Regional Manager for Projects and Facilities for Southern Health Sante Sud, and I live at 6 George Place here in Steinbach. The rezoning of these 3 properties is part of an offer to purchase, and the offer to purchase for those 3 properties is contingent upon the rezoning. This is part of a future plan that will be going forward for relocating most of the parking lot at the back of Bethesda Hospital on Hospital Street to these further properties further to the north. And as council may be aware, there's been a long-term plan at Bethesda to slowly move further to Loewen Boulevard. As a matter of fact, I was made aware by one of the residents that there was actually a get-together with the residents probably over 20 years ago. The only thing, unfortunately, there's only 1 or 2 left that are still those property owners. So this is part of a long-term plan at this point. So that's all I have right now.
Thank you. Any questions of council? Okay, you can take your seat. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? I'll ask again, anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Siemens, second by Councillor Hebert. Go ahead.
A motion to approve?
Second by Councillor Hebert. Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a great addition, if approved, to the Bethesda Regional Health Center. We've got an addition going in, which we've looked forward to, and this would help that. This is apparently supposed to help with the parking. Maybe it'll help with parking on Hospital Street as well. I think this is good in planning. Yes, I remember the discussions 20 years ago and ongoing about where the hospital will expand to. Now we know, and so we can make it happen by approving this.
Thank you. Anything further?
Mr. Mayor, as we all know, the provincial government gave the hospital a grant to expand, and in order for them to expand, of course, they need this further property, so it only makes sense.
Thank you. Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. This bylaw may also be given 3rd reading.
Okay, we'll go into 3rd reading.
So move.
So moved. Second by, okay. Any comments?
Nothing further.
No
Any
further.
comments of council?
Here, here.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is 3rd reading. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to 9, administration, the accounts payable. Back of the book, we've all had a chance to review. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Hebert. Second by Councillor Hebert. Any comments?
No comments. Thank you.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Is there any questions of council?
Bylaw 2163.
Oh, shoot, B. Thank you. Bylaw 2163, this is water and wastewater rates. This is 1st reading. Mr. Working, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Bylaw 2163 is a proposed amendment to the city's water and wastewater rates that are in effect for the entire city. The last sewer and water rate plan was approved in 2018 and did expire at the end of 2020. However, the rates that were in effect at the time of expiry are the rates that continue on until such time as a new rate bylaw is approved. Recommendation is for council to give this rate bylaw 1st reading. It does indicate a slight increase in what the current rates are. In 2023, 24, 25, and 26, ranging anywhere from $1 to $1.35 per month for a typical residential customer. However, depending on use, that would possibly change. But at any rate, administration recommends that this bylaw 2163 be given 1st reading so that the further review and public approval process can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Morgantin. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councilor Swaystra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion to approve.
And second by Councilor Hebert. Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As noted, every few years we have to set the water and sewer rates, and that's what this bylaw does. As noted, there is an increase of about 3 or 4% per year, depending on which year over the next 4 years. That's obviously because the cost of the service continues to increase. Should be noted that this is the rates are governed by the Public Utility Board. That has to be approved, and we can't charge substantially more than what it actually costs or substantially less. We have to charge as close as possible to what the actual cost of providing the service is. And so these are the actual costs that we're estimating that it'll be, and so that's the reason that we have these rates.
Anything further, Councilor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that this is actually very reasonable because we've seen a lot of increase in costs with inflation and so on. So I think it's a good decision.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Any questions of council? Seeing none, we'll go to 11, correspondence and petitions. We have a letter from Cathy Schellenberg referring to Cottonwood Drive. Council, would you like to proceed? Do you want to take it as information? Okay. We've got 11B, Seine Roseau Watershed District. This is referring to the minutes of June 21, 2022, June 27, July 12th, July 18, and July 27th. Looking for a motion to approve. Oh, no, take this as information. Okay. There's no other business. Looking for a motion for adjournment. Councilor Penner. Second by Councilor Hebert. Call for the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Next regular council meeting